Talking a little about, think about a little bit the where the horizon line is in a painting. And this is an example Larry's going to hold up by Emily Carr. And you can see that the horizon line, in other words, where the land and the sky meet, is quite low. So there's lots of sky. And in this particular painting, the sky is very important. It's got really gorgeous brush strokes happening, a lot of movement. She's one of my favorite artists, but I thought that would be fun to show you, to think about where you're going to be placing your horizon line. And now this is another example we're going to look at real quick of a high horizon. Now this is a winter scene, obviously. I love the little stream running through there, and just the simplicity of that painting. It's lovely. But there's an example, a great example of not only an S curve. You can see the S curve kind of running through the center area of the painting, but you can also see that the horizon line is quite high. So I wanted to show you those just before we get started, thinking about where you're going to place your horizon line down the road when we get ready for that part of the painting. Okay, so I think that was it. And this is another really good example of a beautiful sunset. And you may have your own picture as well that you might want to look at, or you can just have fun using the colors that you love and being creative with this project. I'm going to start out on this painting by really getting my paper wet. So the technique that we're using today is called wet in wet. I'm really going to saturate my paper with clean water, and I'm going to be painting right into the water, and that is going to really allow the color to blend in a beautiful way, creating some values, lights and darks. It's also going to allow me to introduce a second color and possibly a third color, which it's a good possibility that I'll do that. So what's happening is that the color, the paint, is mixing right on the watercolor paper. So we're really actually making a very personal statement by doing this. We're creating colors that might become surprises. And I think that's really, really fun. And it's one of the things I really love about painting with watercolor, because you just can always get some really neat things. So I'm dipping my brush, and I'm using a flat. Now, if you don't have a flat, that's totally okay. I want to show you my palette. This is a palette that I kind of like using. It's fun, and I actually cleaned it a little bit today. Now, I can keep these colors that I had previously here. They're dry, just like if you were working in a little pan set. Those colors, and some of you might be working with those, we're going to show you. And those, yep, so those will dry, but they can be reactivated by adding a bit of water to them, right? And you can take those pan colors and you can mix them somewhere. I have a lot of room here to mix, and if you want to find some sort of a tray or a plastic plate or something to mix on, that's really good, because we'll want to be mixing our colors together on the palette as well as on our paper. Okay. So I've got my colors ready, so you should do that. And just to mention that if you're new to watercolor, it's always a good idea, or even if you might forget, to have your supplies to the side. So I'm left-handed. All my supplies are right on my left side. I've got my palette, I have my brushes sort of right here, I have a tissue, and my water container. Okay, so I'm going to start by really saturating the whole paper. Now, I'm not taping this paper down. I'm not really going to tape it down, because I like to be able to pick it up and move it and tilt it. So I'm just going to get this whole paper nice and wet. I'm starting with my gamboge or my Hansa yellow. I'm dipping into it and making a mixture that is, I'll hold it up so you can see, I want to stir it up a little bit so I don't get a bunch of globs on my paintbrush. You see that it's about like that. I want to start in with some real nice strong color for this painting. Whoops. Oh, okay, so I have my color mixed up. My paper is wet, and I'm really going to kind of start here in the center, creating a really kind of a bold brush stroke. It's not like a stripe going across the paper. I move my brush a little bit, and you can see now I have a kind of a nice yellow happening here. It's still quite wet, which is what I want.
It's moving.
It's moving on me now, and it's kind of, as it moves into the paper, it's creating values. In other words, it's moving into the water so that it's getting more values, excuse me. I'm dipping into my alizarin crimson over here, and I'm mixing it in with my yellow. So now I have a real pretty peachy color, and I can just go in here now with this and put it where I want it to go. Put a little bit up at the top too, maybe a little stronger. So I'm introducing more color as I go. I can keep adding these colors because of the fact that the paper is wet. It's quite wet. This is a pretty strong sunset.
Looks good.
It's fun to have these different colors. Okay, so I think I'm going to go back into my yellow. And this, again, I would say this is very, I like the word intuitive. It's very intuitive painting because I'm responding to my paper now and thinking, what do I want to add next? I'm going to go in with a little bit of ultramarine blue into the alizarin to make a pretty purple. Okay, so we're really just using 3 colors today, and I'm going to pop that color up here into my alizarin area. This kind of a wash, when we're using several colors, is called a variegated wash. Pretty simple, really, and you might want to even go down here with a little bit of blue. Now this is, all right. I can take this now and I can tip it and let it move a little bit and see what it's going to do. If I think I need to add more color, I can. At this point, this will need to rest and it will need to dry. Well, we're going to do it again. And this one, of course, will be different. Every time you do it, it's a little bit different. This is a really pretty picture that I took. I don't know if you guys can see it there.
Yep.
There. So what we'll do, once this is dry, we will create a little landscape in the distance, some trees, possibly. Another idea would be to make kind of like a lake. What's happening with that?
It is pretty.
Yeah, so once it's dry, we'll be able to go on to the second step. I want to show you this one. I kind of like this painting. This is one that I did, but it's a winter scene, but it's kind of the same idea where the sky and then the land is happening, and then we've got some beautiful shadows that are cast on the snow. So you can do this with a winter scene as well as a beautiful summer day or spring day as it is today. So I'm starting again. And you might have a photo image that you're looking at. I could put this here. The yellow is in the center here, isn't it? Kind of. And then there's streaks across the sky. So here we go. I'm going to be wetting this paper again, and I got some blue there to get rid of that. So all I did when I got a little bit of blue on my paper, it's because it's on my hand. That's just great. So you can just take your brush and sort of scrub it just a little bit, and it should remove that. I'm wetting my paper again, getting it good and wet. So the water is really saturating this piece of watercolor paper, and it's going into the fibers of the paper. right? Okay, so if your paper is rolling, you know, you can always tape it down. That's always an option. Tape it down to a piece of foam core, or perhaps, yeah, just a piece of cardboard, something like that will work. Or a lot of people like to take a clip and clip it to a piece of cardboard. That'll work as well. Now, if you don't have any of those things, you can always try getting a little bit of water underneath. I just put some water on this board and see if that will help it stay down. I'm going to start with my yellow. And I've got a nice mixture here of my yellow. It's diluted with the water. In other words, I put some water with it on my palette so that it's juicy. It's not a glob on my palette. So I'm starting here, and I'm going to just make some strokes across my paper where I want the yellow to go. Now, I think I need more paint. So took another little bit of paint and mixed it right in here on my palette. And because it's wet, I can go back in and get more color happening here. And I can go into this wash with clean water. There's clean water on my brush. I got rid of a little bit of the water. And I can actually go below where I painted here, for instance, and move this a little bit. I'm going below it and spreading it out a little. I'm also diffusing the color so that it's not quite as strong when I do that. If I want to, at this point, pull out some color, and I don't know if I told you guys about how to do this last week, but you can take a brush that has been cleaned and it's relatively dry, and I can use the brush to pull color out. I pulled it out right there just because I thought that might be a good thing to do and leave some nice light streaks in this. Okay. So after I do that, the color, the paint is on my brush, so I need to rinse it again before I try to paint again or even try to remove more pigment. Okay. You can see that I'm sort of reestablishing some lights in here. I left some lights along this bottom area, in other words, the paper white, which is really fine to do. We don't always have to paint every single part of our paper, and we can leave some, we call it paper white. I'm going to switch to my round brush here. Pull out a little more color along here, I think. So the next part of this would be allowing this to dry, and then we'll go to the next part of this lesson. So you can use a hair dryer, which I did bring my hair dryer today. You can use a hair dryer, or you can just let it dry. I'm going to think now about what do I want to do for my land area. And the one that I did here, hi Larry, the land is going to be quite dark, okay, because of the way that the sun is back in the background here, and it's creating that silhouette, right? So that's good. I'll just use, I have one that I already made, so I can use that.
All right.
So we're going to be mixing a dark. We're not going to use black, but we're going to mix our primary colors together to create a nice dark. And I'm going to show you how to do that. And then you can be thinking a little bit about whether you want to have your painting maybe you have two paintings, but maybe do you want to have a lake and the reflection on the lake, which is what this one is, or perhaps you'd like to have something more like this, where you're just really seeing the tree line, which is fun to do as well. Excuse me. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use my smaller brush, and this is my 10-inch round, right, 10-inch round, I had to double check. And I'm going to mix up a nice dark color by using my blue and my alizarin crimson and a little bit of yellow. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do this. So I've got a little bit of a mess happening right here, and these are the colors I'm going to use. So I've got blue, and I've got alizarin, and it's kind of a purpley color right now, so a little bit of blue. You keep mixing it until you get the color that you're happy with. I'm going to rinse my brush, and I'm going to grab just a bit of yellow. Now that's going to start to turn it a little bit brown. So I might need to go in and put some blue with it, more blue. I'm going to start and make a line, which will be my horizon line. And I think I'm going to kind of have it be about, let's see, I'm going to have it be about 3/4 of the way across here. So right about here. I'm going to start by making this mark across. Now you don't need a ruler. You're just going to make a mark with your dark color here. Once I have that established, I can think about the tree line or the hills or whatever I would like to have in the distance. So I'm working with this dark color and I'm moving my brush upward. In other words, I'm working my way up to create some tree lined areas here. Because this paper is dry, you could always choose to use your pencil and draw this, these shapes before you paint them. Now I'm just kind of making them up, but you can draw them before you make them if you want to. So I can say that this is done if I want to. It's looking kind of cute. I could, like I did on my other one, I added a tree. I'll go ahead and do that. You don't have to do it unless you want to, but I'll just put a little tree here. And again, I'm using this dark mixture, the blue, the alizarin, and a tad bit of orangey yellow in there. So I'm going to go ahead and make a tree now. Another way to do this would be to draw it first, but you can just sort of make it happen.
Pretty.
Thank you, Larry. I'm going to have the tree happening from right here, where my little cattails are, and I'm using my round brush. I hope I have enough paint. I want to make sure there's enough paint on my brush so that I don't have to go back. I'm starting from where the cattails are, and I'm going to take my brush and just pull it straight. It doesn't have to be a straight tree. Okay, there's my tree. Now I know I'm going to need to go over this because it didn't get dark enough. But there's my trunk of my tree. Getting a little darker, especially here where it's in front of my distant land, just an area back there. But that's working for me. Tree doesn't have to be all solid, and it can have a couple different colors happening in it. So I can dip into some color and go along here and get more colors happening. I'm going to make a few little reflections in the water. Now I'm not going to get too strong with this. Remember, this is dry here. So I can very, very lightly, and I don't want to overdo it, but I'm going to use my dark color that I have mixed up and just create a few little shadows here. And I'm really just kind of skipping across the paper with the tip of my brush. I don't need a lot of shadow here. And then I rinse my brush and I can blend these a little bit into the dry surface of the paper. And it should be just fine to do that. Feather it out just a little bit. Okay. All right. So there we have some land in the background and we have a little tree in front. And as I said before, you can always, once it's dry, and for like if I didn't care for this area here very much and I wanted to change it, I can always do that as soon as it's dry. Okay, this was my first one that I did that's quite bold. It's quite strong. I'm going to go ahead this time and I'm going to fill in the whole bottom area, my whole area here. So it's all going to be dark. Thank you guys all so very much for coming. We just enjoyed having you, and it's been such fun. So thank you all, and have a great day.